I used to believe that silence in a marriage meant peace. That comfort was found in the quiet corners of routine, in the muted exchanges over coffee, in the way we coexisted without needing constant conversation. But over time, I learned that silence can also be an alarm, screaming everything you're too afraid to admit. My name is Emily Carter, and I've been married to Jason for 8 years. On paper, we looked perfect. Dual incomes, no children, weekend brunches with friends, a modern condo with abstract art on the walls. People envied us, I think. But envy only sees the surface. No one sees the hollow spaces underneath. Jason was already halfway through his emails when I entered the kitchen that morning, dressed in my favorite blue sweater, the one he used to compliment. He didn't look up, just typed with one hand while sipping black coffee with the other. I was thinking we could try that new Thai place for dinner tonight, I offered, pouring cereal into a bowl. You said you wanted to try something different last week, remember? He nodded absently. Tonight's packed. Big deployment deadline. Maybe Friday. He didn't ask how my night was. He didn't notice I'd gotten my hair cut the day before. I smiled anyway. At work, things felt different, lighter, warmer. I'd been leading a campaign for a new client, and the pace was relentless, but I liked it that way. My colleague Cole often stopped by my office, sometimes with coffee, sometimes just with a dry joke that managed to make me laugh even on the most stressful days. He never lingered inappropriately, never crossed any lines. But he looked me in the eye when he spoke. He listened, and that, lately, felt rarer than it should. On Wednesday, after a particularly long meeting, he lingered by the elevator. You okay? He asked almost casually.
Yeah.
Just tired. He nodded, then added, You seem like you carry more than your share. I didn't respond. I just stepped into the elevator, heart racing for reasons I didn't want to examine too closely. That weekend, my best friend Tara invited me over for wine and what she called emotional detox. Her apartment smelled like lavender and lemon balm, and she greeted me with a tight hug. You look exhausted, she said bluntly. Still playing the role of invisible wife. I rolled my eyes but didn't deny it. We settled on the couch, glasses of wine in hand. Tara had a way of cutting through my defenses without being cruel. Let me ask you something, she said, leveling her gaze. When was the last time Jason looked at you like he saw you? Not just saw you in the room, but saw you? I swallowed hard. I don't know. Does that even matter after almost a decade?
She leaned in. Yes.
That's when it matters. Because that's when people start forgetting each other. Her words stayed with me all night, echoing louder than I wanted them to. I decided to take a leap. Jason's birthday was in 2 weeks, but our anniversary came first. I planned something small but meaningful, an overnight cabin stay just outside the city. I booked the place, arranged the time off for both of us, and even called his assistant to make sure his schedule was cleared. I told myself this would help us reconnect. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe he needed a nudge. The morning of our anniversary, I placed the reservation envelope next to his coffee mug with a handwritten note. Just us. Just one night. Let's find each other again. I added a small gold ribbon. I felt foolish but hopeful. He didn't say anything until the evening. We were sitting across from each other in the living room. He on his laptop, me nervously clutching a throw pillow. Oh, he said, finally looking at the envelope.
This is nice, Em. But I can't do this weekend.
We're behind on the rollout. I stared at him. I cleared it with your assistant. You have the time. He shrugged. Yeah, but I still have to be available. Clients are breathing down our necks. That's not the same as being with me, I whispered. He didn't respond, just clicked back into his spreadsheet. I ended up going to the cabin alone. I cried for hours in a place meant for connection. When I returned the next morning, he wasn't home. A text said he was grabbing drinks with a client. No apology. No explanation. That night, as I stood in the bathroom removing my makeup, I looked at my reflection. Smudged eyeliner, tired eyes, a woman I barely recognized. Something inside me fractured. Jason didn't come home until nearly 2 a.m. He slipped into bed without a word. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of his breathing. He was so close, yet he might as well have been miles away. That was the moment I stopped believing that distance is always physical. The next morning, I sat alone at the kitchen table, my untouched coffee growing cold. I stared at the gold ribbons still on the counter, a small symbol of effort tossed aside. Jason walked in, yawning. "We need to talk," I said. He looked at me for the first time in days. "Sure," he replied flatly, reaching for the cereal box. I didn't recognize this man anymore. And worse, I wasn't sure if he had ever really seen me either. I thought this conversation might bring us closer. I was wrong, because what he said next shattered everything I thought I knew about our marriage. The morning air felt heavier than usual, like the house itself was bracing for what was about to unfold. Jason sat across from me at the kitchen table, a spoon lazily circling his cereal. I hadn't slept. The weight of our unsaid words had pressed against my chest all night. "I meant it," I said, voice low but firm. "We need to talk." He set the spoon down slowly and met my gaze. There was something unnerving about how calm he looked, like this conversation had already played out in his mind, and he wasn't worried about the outcome. "All right," he said, leaning back. "Talk." I hesitated, suddenly unsure where to begin. "Do you even want this marriage anymore?" He didn't flinch. "That's not a simple question." "It should be," I replied, heart pounding. "Either you want to fight for us, or you've already checked out." Jason exhaled and rubbed his eyes. "Emily, we're not the same people we were when we got married. You want connection, intimacy, romance. I want space, independence, stability. We've been drifting for a long time." "I've been reaching," I snapped. "You've been drifting." He nodded, not in agreement, but in acknowledgement. And then he said it so casually it made my blood run cold. "Maybe we need to stop pretending we're still everything to each other. If you're lonely, and there's someone else who makes you feel better, I won't stand in your way." I blinked. "What?" "You heard me," he said, folding his arms. "I'm not saying we break up. I'm saying maybe we redefine what this is. An open arrangement. Quiet, respectful. No questions asked." His tone was clinical, detached, like he was proposing a new phone plan. My stomach turned. "You're giving me permission to cheat?" "I'm saying I understand your needs. I won't judge you for meeting them elsewhere discreetly. It might even help us survive this without all the pressure." I stared at him, unable to find words. He took a sip of coffee like he'd just offered me something generous. "I'm not interested in surviving," I said finally. "I want to live. I want a partner." "Then maybe we're not meant to be partners anymore," he replied with eerie calm. "At least, not in the traditional sense." The conversation ended there, not because we'd resolved anything, but because I needed to breathe. I grabbed my coat and walked out, not knowing where I was going, just that I had to escape. I ended up at Tara's. She opened the door in sweats, a towel wrapped around her head. "Jesus, Em. You okay?" I collapsed onto her couch and told her everything. Jason's offer, his tone, the cold logic of it all. Tara paced the living room like a caged animal. "That's not a marriage. That's a contract with escape clauses." I ran my hands through my hair. It felt like he was negotiating with me. Like I'm an inconvenience he's trying to outsource. Or like he's already doing it and wants to clear his conscience, she shot back. The thought had occurred to me, too. I'd noticed the late nights, the sudden interest in his appearance, the new cologne he never wore for me. "He didn't even flinch," I whispered. Like he'd practiced that speech. Tara sat beside me. "You don't owe him your loyalty if he's already thrown his away." Her words hit hard. I stayed at her place that night. I couldn't go home. Not yet. The next morning, I returned to work exhausted, emotionally raw. Cole passed me in the hallway and paused. "You all right?" he asked gently. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Rough night." He didn't press, but his eyes lingered with quiet concern. Later, he left a coffee on my desk with a note. "One day at a time. Simple.
Kind.
Human." For a moment, I considered telling him everything. Not to cross any lines, but because I felt like I was drowning and he offered a glimpse of oxygen. But I held back. This wasn't his burden. Still, I couldn't stop the comparisons from forming in my mind. Cole listened. Jason calculated. Cole noticed when I looked tired. Jason noticed when his phone buzzed. Back at home that evening, Jason acted as if nothing had happened. He talked about work, mentioned a new client, asked if we needed anything from the grocery store. I watched him, detached, trying to recognize the man I'd loved. "Do you think you've already fallen out of love with me?" I asked suddenly.
He looked up from his laptop.
"I think love evolves." "That's not an answer." He shrugged. "Maybe I don't believe in the kind of love that demands exclusivity anymore." "So, it's philosophical now." "It's practical, Emily." "No," I said, standing. "It's cowardly." He said nothing. I went upstairs and shut the door. That night, I didn't cry. I just stared at the ceiling and tried to imagine my life without him. And terrifyingly, it didn't feel like a loss. It felt like relief. By the morning, I'd made up my mind. I couldn't live in a home where betrayal wore the mask of compromise. It's strange how clarity doesn't always arrive with a dramatic revelation. Sometimes, it tiptoes in during the simplest moments, when you're tying your shoes, making coffee, or watching someone breathe beside you, unaware that you're slipping away. I woke up before Jason, not because of restlessness, but because I'd slept better than I had in weeks. A quiet resolve had settled over me, and it felt peaceful. I moved through the morning like a ghost, packing a small suitcase, folding clothes with clinical precision. I didn't cry. I didn't second-guess. Something had broken inside me the day he offered to share our marriage like a timeshare, and there was no patching it back together. Jason wandered into the bedroom mid-morning, still groggy. He paused when he saw the suitcase. "Are you going somewhere?" "Yes," I said, zipping it shut. He rubbed his eyes. "Business trip?"
"No, Jason."
"I'm leaving." He blinked. The silence between us stretched. "You mean for the weekend?"
"No."
"I'm leaving us." There was spoken aloud for the first time. The end we both knew was coming, but neither had dared name. Jason looked like he'd been slapped.
"Wait."
"You're serious?" I nodded. "You suggested I find affection elsewhere. That we could survive with secrets and silence. That's not a life I want." He stepped forward, hands raised slightly. "Emily, come on. That wasn't a demand. It was a suggestion for your sake. You've been miserable. And you thought the solution was to hand me off like a burden you couldn't carry?" His mouth opened, then shut again. For once, he didn't have a response. "I loved you," I said, voice trembling but steady. "I fought for this. I waited for you to show up again. But I can't keep living like I'm the only one still in this marriage." Jason sat on the edge of the bed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. "You're right," he said finally. "I didn't fight. I checked out. I thought if I could just keep everything stable, maybe that would be enough." It wasn't. I know. We sat in the silence of our unraveling. No anger. No shouting. Just the quiet collapse of what once was. "Where will you go?" he asked softly. "Tara's for now." "Then?" "I don't know. Somewhere that feels like mine." He nodded. "I guess I thought you'd never leave." "That was your mistake." I left with nothing but a suitcase, my laptop, and a heart both bruised and reborn. Tara welcomed me with open arms and a bottle of wine. "You did it," she said. "I'm proud of you." "I don't feel proud," I admitted. "I feel like I failed." "No," she said, guiding me to the couch. "You didn't fail. You finished. There's a difference." The days that followed were a blur of logistics, legal paperwork, change of address forms, awkward emails to friends who didn't know which one of us to side with. I kept busy, kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking still hurt. But then something changed. I began rediscovering myself. I took walks at sunset. I bought groceries I actually liked. I filled the apartment with fresh flowers and played music that made me feel alive. I stopped dressing for someone else's approval. I started writing again, short pieces at first, reflections mostly, but it helped me stitch myself back together. Cole continued to be kind, present in a way that never overstepped but always reassured. One afternoon, I found a handwritten note slipped into my office notebook. Sometimes the people who break us aren't villains. They're just not meant to stay. No name.
But I knew it was from him.
Still, I made no moves. I needed time to heal without attaching my worth to someone else's gaze. Then, a month after I left, Jason asked to meet. We sat in a quiet cafe, not the type we used to frequent, but neutral territory. He looked tired, older, somehow. "I won't keep you long," he said. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry. For all of it." I didn't respond, just listened. I thought love meant giving freedom, but I was really just giving up. I thought I was doing the mature thing, offering you an out. But I see now, I was protecting myself from guilt instead of protecting you from pain. I nodded. "Thank you for saying that. I still care about you." "I know. I care about you too. But that doesn't mean we belong together." He smiled sadly. "You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for." And that was it. No dramatic plea. No last-minute confession of undying love. Just two people closing a door with dignity. I walked away from that meeting lighter. Weeks turned into months. Eventually, I reached out to Cole, not with romantic intentions, but simply to grab coffee as friends. And that's how it began.
Slowly.
Patiently. Honestly. Because healing isn't a lightning strike. It's a sunrise. And for the first time in a long time, I was walking toward the light.